everyone. Welcome to my cultural biography. My name is Teresa Delgadillo, and today I will be sharing some information about my family. Before I show my diagram of my family tree, I wanted to mention that both sides of my family are quite large. However, I decided to showcase my maternal side because I have met the majority of my family members and I have more information about our relationships. At the top of the diagram are my grandparents. I asked my mom and my aunts about my great-great-grandparents. However, they themselves were not sure since both of my grandparents were actually raised by different family members rather than their own parents. My mother also mentioned that she never got the chance to meet her own grandparents as well. I myself never had the chance to meet my grandfather on my mom's side of the family because he passed away long before I was born. Back in Samoa, my grandparents owned a farm and thus had many children to help out and take care of the land. My mother is the second youngest of 12 children and was often spoiled by my grandfather. The majority of my aunts and uncles were born in my grandfather's village of Safotu in Samoa, whereas my cousins and I were born either in American Samoa, New Zealand, Australia, or in the United States. In this diagram, I was able to include all of my aunts and uncles who are in the light turquoise boxes. My cousins are labeled in the neon green boxes. I was not able to include all of my cousins and their families. Instead, I have included those who I actually have met and still keep in contact today. My parents are labeled in yellow, and my one sibling is in orange. Here is a picture of my grandparents back when they still lived in Samoa. In terms of family structure, I currently live with my parents, my younger brother, my grandmother on my dad's side, and one of my many uncles, due to the pandemic. In my family's garage, we have a spare room and bathroom. For as long as I can remember, we have always had other family members outside of my immediate family living with us, from both my mom and dad's side of the family. Right now, my grandmother on my dad's side lives there with us. Growing up, I was raised by my mom, my dad, as well as both of my grandmothers. I lived with my immediate family, however, I would spend a good amount of my childhood at my dad's mom's house because we lived in the same town and her house was about a 5-minute drive away. There were always people coming and going to visit my grandmother, and I would always get excited when one of my cousins would come over and play. Here are a few pictures of me and my cousins playing at my grandmother's house. On to history and origins. My mom was born on the island of Savaii in a village called Safotu. Her native language is Samoan, and she was taught English at an early age. Growing up, my mom went to a Methodist church and is still religious to this day. In 1987, my mom moved to Auckland, New Zealand to attend university and live with her sister. However, she ended up working instead. Later, my mom helped her mother move to the US after her dad passed away in 1995 and settled in East Palo Alto, California. My dad was born and raised in Mexico City until he was 8 years old. He then developed an illness which then caused his mother to make the decision to take my dad and his 3 siblings and move to California to seek medical treatment in 1979. My dad's native language is Spanish, but he made an effort to learn English once he was in America. He was also raised Catholic for the majority of his life, but then converted to a non-denominational form of Christianity once he met my mom. His family settled in Menlo Park, but would eventually move to East Palo Alto. In 1995, my parents met for the first time, and by 1996, they were married. In 1997, my parents had their first child, which also happens to be me. Moving on to cultural artifacts and traditions, one object that holds cultural significance in Samoan culture is the tuinga. In the past, the tuinga was a traditional headpiece worn strictly by high chiefs and their offspring because, according to Si'ilata, tuingas were made of the most prized materials and resources in Samoan culture, meaning not everyone in the village could adorn one. As trading began to occur in Samoa, the materials to make a tuinga became more common and the cultural significance of the headpiece went down as well. Nowadays, the tuinga is more associated with being an item that women wear during a tawalunga. The tawalunga is a traditional dance that is usually performed at big events such as weddings and milestone birthdays. In the past, high chiefs and or his children would perform the tawalunga. However, it is now a common dance that is usually performed by women to signify the end of an event. Speaking of the tawalunga, here is a short clip of me performing one while wearing a tuinga on my 21st birthday. In Samoan culture, it is traditional to throw money at the performer as it is a way to help support the person or the event, since buying or bringing gifts was not a custom in Samoa until recent times. As for important people within the Samoan community, Sima Urale is the first female Samoan film director who has won multiple international awards for her films. Her most notable film is O Tamaiti, which follows the story of a young Samoan boy who is also the guardian of his siblings. The film expresses the importance of the bonds between siblings in Samoa. In an interview conducted by the Arts Foundation, Sima Urale states that, for a long time, seeing Polynesian faces on the screen was rare. There were not enough of us involved in the arts. It's different now, but having experienced what it's like to be a minority and not seeing yourself being part of the landscape in a film, I can understand. I think it's important for other minority groups to also come through. I agree with her statement because it is important for underrepresented communities to be able to express themselves and to have the chance to share their ideas with the world. Another Samoan figure that I wanted to include is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is most famously known for his wrestling career as well as his starring roles in films such as The Scorpion King and the Fast and Furious franchise. When I found out that Dwayne Johnson was also half Samoan like myself, I was excited despite not being much of a wrestling fan. However, it still felt nice to see other Afakasi or half Samoan people in mainstream media. As for cultural beliefs and values, according to an article from The Diplomat, 98% of the Samoan population in Samoa identify as Christian. In 2017, Samoa became a Christian state, meaning the country has recognized Christianity as an official religion and has a denomination that supports the government, as well as the government supporting that denomination. Religion has always been important to my mom and her siblings because whenever they visit or when they come together, we would always end the day with a prayer or a hymn. In fact, a fourth of my mom's siblings are pastors. Samoa did have an indigenous religion where, according to the head of state Tuiatua, all matter, whether human, water, animal, plant, and the biosphere, are issues of Tangaloa Alelangi. They are divine creations connected by genealogy. They share the same biological beginnings. In this case, Tangaloa Alelangi is known as the progenitor god. As for bias and discrimination, in the late 18th century, French and English voyagers encountered Polynesian people and thought they were living representations of the idea of a noble savage, a concept created by Jean-Jacques Rousseau that claimed that these native people were primitive, childlike, and innocent. Europeans would later take advantage of these depictions and colonize and force Christianity upon many within the South Pacific instead of allowing them to practice their traditional religions. In terms of a more modern example, Pacific Islanders are often viewed as lazy, unintelligent, or rude. One example of this in the media is an Australian show called Jonah and Tonga, where the main actor is in literal brownface in order to portray a young rebellious Tongan youth who is disrespectful and considered a delinquent to his peers. Thank you so much for watching my cultural biography. I hope it was interesting, and once again, thank you.